Imagine if the secret to sticking with fitness wasn't hours on a treadmill or, really grueling weight sessions, but actually just playing a game you genuinely loved. Because for so many of us, staying active feels like this constant battle, right? Against boredom, lack of motivation. We know we should do it, but finding something actually enjoyable, something sustainable, well, that's often the hard part. Today, we're diving into some really exciting new research that offers, well, a pretty compelling solution. Modified versions of recreational soccer. We're looking at a great piece of work. It's titled, Comparing the Effects of Small-Sided and Medium-Sided Soccer Games on Physical Fitness Adaptations in Untrained Men, a Randomized Controlled Study. Okay. It's by Xinjie Han, Lu Lei, Jiawei Chen, Weiqiang, Robert Trybulski, and Filipe Manuel Clemente. Published just recently, actually March 1st, 2025, online in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine. That's volume 24, pages 142 to 153. We'll link the DOI in the description, of course. And our mission today really is to unpack what this study set out to do. It's specifically aimed to compare the effects of what they call small-sided games, SSG, and medium-sided games, MSG, on a bunch of different physical fitness measures. And crucially, this was in untrained men over an 8-week period. It's all about figuring out if getting fit through fun and play can actually be just as good as, the more traditional stuff.
Yeah, and what's really striking, I think, is how the article kicks things off. It frames it around this huge, widespread problem. Physical inactivity.
Yeah.
It highlights that, a sedentary lifestyle isn't just a personal thing. It's a major public health issue, directly linked to serious stuff like obesity, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes. The list goes on. And the authors make a great point. Traditional exercise, for many people, it just feels like a chore, right? And that's a massive barrier to sticking with it.
Exactly. And that's where, the genius of using something like recreational soccer comes in. If the usual gym routine feels tedious, maybe moving your body could actually feel, well, fun, like playing again. This research really leans into that idea that a fun social activity can be a powerful way to fight that exercise boredom, boost motivation, and actually make fitness something people want to do long term.
Absolutely. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, recreational soccer, because it's inherently social, it's dynamic, it just looks like a really appealing community-based way to get people moving. It doesn't just help people start exercising. It really thinks to improve the chances they'll actually keep doing it. And beyond just getting people off the couch, the potential health benefits are huge. Existing reviews, the literature out there consistently show real, measurable benefits. Things like lower blood pressure, better cardiovascular function, positive changes in metabolic markers, even reductions in body mass, body fat percentage, and blood sugar, especially in obese populations. It's kind of like a whole health package hidden inside a game.
That's a great way to put it. So building on that, the study then really zooms in on these inner-sided games. Now, these aren't your typical full 11-a-side matches we see on TV. They're modified, smaller versions. So what exactly are these formats, and how do they kind of cleverly tweak the game to hit different fitness buttons, so to speak?
Right. Sided games are actually quite clever because they let you fine-tune the physical and physiological demands just by changing things like the number of players or the size of the playing area. This study mainly looked at two types. First, you've got small-sided games, or SSG. These typically involve fewer players, maybe 1 versus 1, up to 3 versus 3. And the paper describes these as highly demanding, which makes sense, right? Fewer players means you're constantly involved. Lots of sprinting, stopping, starting. These create really intense bursts. Average heart rates often shoot above 85% of maximum. You see higher lactate levels. Basically, optimal conditions for the development of aerobic power, as the paper puts it. Think like 1v1 on a tiny pitch, maybe 10 by 15 meters, or 3v3 on something like 18 by 25 meters. Very intense.
Okay, so that's SSG, intense constant action. What about the other type?
The other type is medium-sided games, or MSG. Here you have more players, typically 6 versus 6, up to maybe 8 versus 8, and these are usually played on bigger pitches, say 30 by 30 meters or even 40 by 40. Now, while it's still dynamic, that extra space and having more teammates means you might get more chances for longer runs, more high-speed running. The paper suggests these provide more opportunities for neuromuscular stimulation due to the increased demands of high-speed running and prolonged running. So it's a different kind of physical stress compared to SSG.
That's a really clear distinction. And it's interesting because intuitively, we might know that these different formats feel different when you play on the acute demands, as you say. But what's been less clear, apparently, is how they stack up over the long haul for improving fitness, especially for people like, well, most of us who aren't elite athletes. Was that the gap they were trying to fill?
Exactly that. That was the core research question. We know SSG feels intense now, and MSG might involve more running now. But how do those different immediate feelings translate into actual measurable fitness gains over weeks or months? That's why their specific aim was so focused, to compare the long-term effects of those fitness adaptations in untrained men after this dedicated 8-week program. They even had initial hypotheses, They thought maybe SSG, being so physiologically demanding, would be better for boosting aerobic fitness, whereas MSG, with the bigger pitches encouraging more sprinting and longer runs, might do more for muscle power and sprint speed. They wanted to test if those ideas held up.
Right, so to test that, they needed a solid plan. How do they actually set up the experiment? What did the methodology look like? Because that's key to trusting the results, isn't it?
Absolutely. They used a really strong design, a randomized controlled trial, which is kind of the gold standard for this sort of question. They got 60 untrained men, average age around 18, nearly 19 years old, and they randomly put them into one of 3 groups, 20 guys in each. So you had the SSG group playing those small, intense games, you had the MSG group playing medium-sized games, and then a control group, they called it NSG, who just carried on with their usual, mostly sedentary lifestyle. The main training part lasted 8 weeks. The SSG and MSG guys trained 3 times a week. But, and this is important, before they started the fitness part, everyone in the soccer groups did 8 sessions, about 45 minutes each, just focusing on basic technical skills. Passing, dribbling, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's smart. So everyone could actually play the game properly and enjoy it, rather than struggling with the basics.
Exactly. It levels the playing field in terms of skill, so the focus could really be on the physical demands and enjoyment of the game itself.
Okay, so they had the groups, they had the training plan. How do they actually measure fitness? You mentioned a whole range of parameters earlier. What tests did they use before and after those 8 weeks?
Yeah, they went for a pretty comprehensive look. For explosive power, they used the standing long jump, how far you can jump forward from a standstill, and the vertical jump, how high you can jump straight up. Standard tests for lower body power.
Right.
Then for speed, they timed 10-meter and 30-meter sprints. To measure agility or change of direction ability, they used the 5:05 test. That involves sprinting, stopping, turning 180 degrees, and sprinting back.
Ah, yes, the 5:05 tests that quick stop-start ability.
Precisely. And finally, for cardiorespiratory fitness, which is basically your endurance capacity, they use the classic 20-meter multi-stage fitness test. You probably know it as the beep test.
Oh, the beep test, yes, brings back memories.
Yeah.
Okay, so a really thorough set of physical tests. And during the actual training sessions, how did they track how hard people were working? Did they monitor intensity?
They did, using 2 methods. Objectively, they had everyone wear Polar RS400 heart rate monitors during every single soccer session. So they got real-time data on how fast their hearts were beating, a direct measure of physiological stress.
Okay.
But they also looked at the subjective side. After each session, participants reported their rating of perceived exertion, or RPE, using the Borg CR10 scale. This basically asks, how hard did that feel on a scale of 0 to 10?
Right, because how hard it feels isn't always perfectly matched to heart rate, is it? It includes muscle fatigue, mental effort.
Exactly. So using both the objective heart rate and the subjective RPE gives you a much richer picture of the actual workload and the participant's experience.
Okay, fascinating setup. So the big question then. After 8 weeks of playing either small-sided or medium-sided soccer games, what actually happened? What did the results show for these untrained guys?
Well, the main headline finding was really quite striking. Both the SSG group and the MSG group showed significant improvements across pretty much all the physical tests compared to the control group who didn't train. We're talking real, tangible changes. They saw reductions in body mass and BMI. They improved their jump performance, both standing long jump and vertical jump. They got faster in sprints, both the short 10-meter burst and the longer 30-meter sprint. Their change of direction times got quicker, and their endurance, measured by that beep test, went up significantly.
Wow, so improvements across the board. Can you give us a sense of the magnitude, like percentage-wise?
Sure. So for the SSG group, body mass and BMI dropped by about 4.9%. Standing long jump went up 3.7%, vertical jump 5.9%. Sprints improved quite a bit. 10 meters got 7.6% faster, 30 meters 4.7% faster. Change of direction improved 4.4%, and their beep test score went up by nearly 12%, 11.8%.
Okay, those are solid numbers. What about the MSG group?
Very similar story, equally impressive. The MSG group, body mass and BMI down slightly more, actually 5.1%. Standing long jump up 3.1%, vertical jump 5%. Sprint improvements were 5.4% for 10 meters and 3.0% for 30 meters. Change of direction improved 5.6%, and their beep test score had the biggest jump, 13.6% improvement.
Interesting. So looking at those numbers side by side, it sounds like both formats really delivered significant results. Does this mean the study basically concluded it doesn't matter which one you pick?
That's pretty much the main takeaway, yeah. The study's conclusion states it quite clearly. Both SSG and MSG are equally effective in enhancing physical fitness parameters in untrained men.
So for someone starting out, either small games or slightly larger games are likely to give them a great fitness boost.
Exactly. Now, there was a little bit of nuance. The study did note observationally that SSG seemed to show a more pronounced improvement in sprinting ability, particularly that short 10-meter sprint, while MSG perhaps showed a more favorable enhancement in aerobic endurance, looking at that big jump in the beep test. Ah, okay. So slight hints towards their original hypotheses, maybe?
Slight hints, perhaps. But, and this is the crucial part, these differences between the SSG and MSG groups were not statistically significant.
Gotcha. So while you might see a slightly bigger number here or there, you can't confidently say one was definitively better than the other based on this data alone.
Precisely. And what's really interesting is looking at the intensity data. The average heart rates during the games were very similar for both groups. 167 beats per minute for SSG, 166 for MSG, both well over 80% of their max heart rate.
So despite maybe feeling different or having slightly different movement patterns, the overall cardiovascular intensity was pretty much the same.
It seems so, which likely explains why the overall fitness improvements were so similar. Interestingly, though, the participants perceived the SSG sessions being slightly harder. Their RPE scores were a bit higher for SSG than MSG, even though the heart rates were almost identical.
That is interesting. Perception versus physiology. And just to hammer the point home, the control group, as expected, really. The control group, the ones who stayed sedentary, showed basically no significant improvements in any of these fitness measures over the 8 weeks. It really highlights that the soccer interventions were the drivers of these positive changes.
Okay, so we know what happened. Impressive fitness gains from both types of games. The next big question is why? What's going on in the body that makes these games so effective? And who could really benefit from this knowledge?
Right, understanding the why is key. Physiologically, it breaks down based on the demands. For aerobic capacity, your endurance, the dynamic and intense nature of these games, whether small or medium, means your body is constantly needing more oxygen. This repeated stimulus forces your cardiovascular system to adapt. Your heart gets stronger, your blood vessels might become more efficient, your muscles get better at using oxygen, all leading to better stamina.
Makes sense. Constant movement, high heart rates. It's classic aerobic training, just more fun.
Exactly. And then for things like muscle power, sprinting, and agility, it comes down to all those frequent explosive movements. Every time you accelerate quickly, sprint after a ball, jump for a header, or slam on the brakes and change direction, that's a powerful stimulus for your neuromuscular system.
Neuromuscular.
Yeah.
So the connection between the brain and the muscles.
Yeah. Your brain gets better at recruiting motor units, basically activating more muscle fibers, especially the fast twitch ones needed for power and speed. Your coordination improves. Even the act of decelerating, those rapid stops, involves eccentric muscle contractions, which can help improve the muscle's stretch-shortening cycle. That's crucial for optimizing power in movements like jumping.
Wow, so it really is a full-body workout hitting multiple systems just through playing. So thinking practically, what does this mean for people who could use this info?
The practical implications are pretty broad, I think. The findings suggest SSG and MSG could be really beneficial for a wide range of people. For individuals who are already reasonably fit, these games could be a fantastic, maybe more engaging alternative to standard high-intensity interval training. HIIT, keep things fresh, you know?
Yeah, definitely less monotonous than sprints on a treadmill for some people.
For sure.
Yeah.
But maybe even more importantly, think about clinical populations, or maybe older adults. Because you can modify the intensity, change the pitch, size, number of players, game duration, add more breaks. These games offer a potentially safer yet effective way to improve heart function, endurance, and overall fitness.
That adaptability is key.
It really is. But of course, the authors rightly stress the importance of careful planning. You can't just throw untrained people into intense games. Proper warm-ups are crucial. And you need to manage the exposure, especially to those frequent accelerations and decelerations, to minimize injury risk. Gradual progression is essential.
That's really important advice. Sensible implementation. Now, as with any study, it's important to talk about limitations. No single piece of research can tell us everything. What were some of the caveats noted in this paper?
Yeah, acknowledging limitations is good science. A few key ones were mentioned. Firstly, the sample demographics. This study specifically looked at untrained male participants, all around 19, 20 years old.
Right, so we can't automatically assume the exact same results would happen in women or in kids or in older adults.
Exactly. Generalizability is limited there. Secondly, the intervention duration was 8 weeks. While they saw significant improvements, which is great, 8 weeks might still be a relatively short time to see the full extent of long-term adaptations, especially for things that change more slowly, like maybe maximal oxygen uptake or very fine-tuned power changes.
Okay, what else?
There was a point about control group monitoring. While they confirmed the control group maintained a sedentary lifestyle overall, you never have perfect control over everything they do outside the study. So comparing intensity levels across groups always has that slight caveat. And finally, the focus on body composition. While they measured body mass and BMI, which are important health indicators, the study didn't delve deeply into what caused those changes. Was it mostly fat loss, or were there also gains in muscle mass? Or were neural adaptations playing a bigger role in the performance improvements? That wasn't fully teased apart.
Those are fair points. So knowing these limitations, where does the research go from here? What kind of future studies could build on these findings?
The authors suggest a few interesting directions. They'd like to see more research looking at how recreational team sports impact cardiovascular responses over even longer periods. Also, really digging into the enjoyment factor. How does that influence adherence and intensity over time in real-world settings? That seems crucial for public health. And comparing these soccer games directly against other types of exercise interventions would be valuable too. That could help us understand subjective effort, how hard different activities feel, and maybe tailor recommendations better.
Lots more to explore then. But wrapping up our deep dive for today, the main message seems pretty clear, doesn't it? Both small-sided and medium-sided recreational soccer games are, well, remarkably effective ways to boost physical fitness, especially for men starting from an untrained state. They offer this really fun, engaging social route to better health.
Yeah.
It's not just about the physical benefits, but that whole package of play, teamwork, and getting fitter.
Absolutely. It's a powerful demonstration of integrating play back into fitness. And it leaves you with a really interesting thought, doesn't it? Beyond just the numbers, the faster sprints, the lower BMI, how might the social connection and the sheer enjoyment of team sports like this fundamentally change how we approach health and stay motivated long term compared to exercising alone? And maybe how can we harness that power of enjoyment to help even more people across different ages and abilities find a sustainable way to be active? That feels like a really important question moving forward.
That is a fantastic thought to leave our listeners with. And if you do want to get into all the nitty-gritty details of the study design, the specific results, the statistical analysis, we absolutely recommend reading the full article. Again, it's comparing the effects of small-sided and medium-sided soccer games on physical fitness adaptations in untrained men, a randomized controlled study. You'll find the link and full citation in our show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the science of fitness and fun, make sure you follow our channel, turn on those notifications so you don't miss our next exploration into fascinating new research.